the first question of the panel around and ask you in the audience, how many of you, raise your hand if you know, how many of you use or know the Dürre monitor, the drought monitor of the Helmholtz Center in Germany? Whether you know it or not, feel free to take out your phones, look it up, and check out the content on the website. I use it quite frequently, most of the time to check out how much water the farms of my friends are getting, but also because it shows me that this country is currently in a state of drought, severe drought, and when we turn on the faucet, the water still comes out. That we take for granted, but below that lie receding groundwater levels. Below that lies the most severe drought in early spring that we've experienced for a long time, and there below that lies an increasing competition of various industries for our basic resource, which is water. And that brings us to today's panel, and I'm very glad that we're joined by three experts who bring much expertise of entrepreneurship, of technical, and of practical knowledge to the table. So you guys, Jacob, Thilo, you have already had the opportunity to say a few words, but I would be glad if each of you guys could say 2 sentences. Who are you and what's your expertise? Please.
I can start. My name is Brice Lemarechal. My background is I studied agricultural sciences, but I've been working in the field of irrigation for the last 5 years. And I'm basically doing the work of an irrigation engineer. This position does not exist in Germany. So unfortunately, we're really lacking experts in irrigation because it's always treated, we have water. And irrigation is basically just put a bit of water on the crops. I'm working at the company irriport. It's an engineering bureau. We do consultation, project planning, and also construction survey of big irrigation projects. And it's always from the water source to the crops and always automated, because we think we need system solutions, so system integration of the best hardware we have, of the best knowledge we have to get efficient. It's not just about automation and smart systems, it's about the whole value chain.
Thank you, please.
Yeah, so I'll take over. I'm Thilo, grew up on a farm in Lower Saxony, Lüneburger Heide, probably the shittiest ground, the soil in Germany, I guess. And I was always planning to be a practical farmer at some point, like my father was. But then during my studies, my bachelor's studies in agriculture, I decided, well, maybe the business side is a bit more interesting for me. So I did a finance master, and then I worked in a strategy consultancy for a few years. And then last year, the guys who founded Agvolution called me and were, well, Thilo, aren't you a bit sick of your laptop work and want to join us here? And that's where I'm now, joined Agvolution half a year ago.
Very cool. Thank you. And Jacob, for those in the audience who just joined, 2 sentences.
Jacob van Borne, a potato farmer in the south of the Netherlands and a head runner in precision farming for the last 20 years.
Perfect. So maybe to start the discussion, a question from each of your perspectives. What's the biggest challenge we face in securing water supplies for the future at the moment? Feel free to start freely.
So I think there are probably 2 challenges currently, and one is awareness, and awareness not only for farmers, but every single one of us, I guess. So even in daily business and daily life, we're not aware enough of how urgent the situation actually is. And the other point is incentives. I mean, water is a very cheap resource. You don't pay much for water, so you need an incentive to be able or to want to save it. And that's something that's currently missing everywhere. I think we don't have incentives in the daily life to save it as it's cheap. For farmers, well, there's code at some point, so they should save it, but still, there's no real incentive to save water. I think those awareness and incentives are, in my opinion, the biggest challenges.
Totally agree. Just to add on, and also awareness of technology that could actually help everybody to save water. And but who belongs water to? The rights of water is also something that governments are really hard about.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be a real game changer. If agriculture in our region goes without water, we can stop. So,
yeah, I agree. So there's water scarcity. We don't have a lack of water, but we have a seasonal lack of water and a regional lack of water. So the biggest challenge, in my opinion, is a water management issue. So it's not just about farming. It's not just about industry and municipality. We need a whole ecosystem of everyone working together, because right now it's every single industry is working on its own, and it's not an issue that agriculture can solve by itself. It's not a thing a farmer can do. We need a bigger picture.
You said it in your keynote. How do I know how much water is mine? You said it as well, and water is a very cheap resource. It's free to use, basically. How do we find a fair balance between the municipal water supply that has the legal priority and the agricultural water supply that we need to grow our crops?
I might just start. So I think the drinking water is, I think we're clear on that. Drinking water is the most important part. So that's priority number one. And following that, that's always a pretty hard business. I think the way in Germany, how it works with those strict limits and quotas in some areas, that's actually a pretty cool thing. And what I like, or what I would like to add on that is the Australian system, for example. So for everyone who's not clear about that, in Germany, a farmer gets a quota for about 8 to 10 years. And on average, he's not allowed to get over a certain amount of water irrigation. And in Australia, they do the same thing. Just one difference, you can trade it. So if you're very efficient and don't use that much water, then you can sell it to your neighbor. And I think that's a nice and interesting way of how you could enhance efficiency and make every farmer or everyone who's using water more efficient by having the possibility to sell it once you're efficient. I think that might be one way.
So,
please.
Then I would say yes, that's one step. So to value water, because right now either you get the right, if you're efficient or not, it doesn't matter. You have the right, you can use the water. So to sell the product, to sell water is a solution, but we have to have restrictions, because, for instance, in California or in the US, it's mainly golf courses and so leisure activities who get the water because they can pay most. I think from my perspective, I would say farmers are not just farmers, they're landscape managers. So as you have shown, the water is mainly harvested on soils, on agricultural soils and forestry soils. So I don't see agriculture as a competition to municipalities. Municipalities should be interested in farmers to do good soil management, to get water infiltration, and to harvest water. So I think there is more synergy than competition. But of course, there should also be monetary compensation or some incentives for the farmers.
Would you call yourself a land manager?
Oh, yeah.
You've talked a lot about innovation and technology, and we have many startups here who are innovative and are developing new technologies. But should the question also be, how do we use what we already have? I'm thinking about wastewater reusage. When we're talking about water, we always talk about fresh water that's coming out of the ground from the sky. What about wastewater reusage from the cities? I know about a project in the city of Braunschweig who are doing that since the 1950s. Is that a thing that we're missing?
I think for sure. There is a lot of water wasted and also could be used for agriculture usage. I don't say it could be used for food production, but there are other usages of water. You could also grow carbon, storage carbon, but also grow there are a lot of things where you could use that water for. And now we spend a lot of money into cleaning it, but still it's not going into the sector that's actually needing it. It's just dumped into the sea or into the rivers and then back into the sea. Touch the last topic. I agree with you guys, but the management of the water is not the management of my farm. It's a management of a whole region. And I think if we wanna really get our goals, we need to work together. We need to be able to share rights, but also the one that doesn't need the water could transfer that water to a region that it really needs. As long as the efficiency, the leaching, and the real efficiency of the water is guaranteed by data. That's my approach of the water system.
I think in terms of that usage of wastewater, I think politics have to make a big step on that as well, because I've just talked a few days ago to a guy. They have a company that tries to collect the roof water in cities and use it for tree irrigation. And he says, well, in many areas we're not allowed to, because the rainwater from the roofs has to go straight underground in the whatever you call it. And so there's just a big step in terms of laws and bureaucracy that has to change before you can actually make big steps and to make a planning on that.
Yeah, I agree, but the first steps have been made. So there has been a law in 2023, so 2 years ago, and it's getting implemented in Germany right now. Because at the moment we have the wastewater, it goes into the river and the farmer is allowed to take the water from 10 meters behind that, but he's not allowed to use directly the wastewater. And that's being changed, and also with the new laws where wastewater must be treated for chemicals, for instance, for hormones and so on, and the water quality will increase a lot. So there's a big chance, because usually for the farmers, I mean, you in the Netherlands, you have water, same in northern Germany, but in most parts, there's no possibility to irrigate because you have to dig a well that is very deep. You don't get the amount of water, the discharge. And with the wastewater, you suddenly have a water source in regions where you don't have water for agriculture. So that's a huge potential, not just by volume, but especially to create new decentralized solutions.
You spoke about transparency and networks. How can we make water usage more transparent for customers and the regulatories?
Make it visible.
Which you mean by?
Dashboarding. Just make water visible, like it is. It is our main research, but it's too cheap, so we don't talk about it. It doesn't have any real value, so we can spill. So, or we need to make it expensive, but please don't do that.
Just for a week, maybe.
Maybe. But make visible what kind of water is used and what kind of water is spilled. And if people recognize what our status is, maybe then they get more incentive. There will be more incentive.
And would you say we need to increase the role that regulation plays, or let market mechanisms decide what best?
Let markets decide. But then, of course, your thing about the real expensive golf courses have the money. Yeah, that's the next issue. So,
I think I'm not a fan of any restrictions or any bans or whatever. But we have the quota system. I think the nice ways to get more out of it. Because, for example, currently every farmer gets his quota that he can use on his fields. But why can't we connect them to using efficiency, or even give them 20% higher quota for 5 years or whatever if they use a new technology or try things out like Jacob is doing it? So I wouldn't say, because then small farmers wouldn't be good for them as well. You can't just say you get the quota once you use technology, but you could say, okay, you get 20% more quota if you use a new technology. We're currently in a situation where you could do that, because it's not that we're in a big draft. But in 5 to 10 years, that might have changed, and then it's too late. So I think we still have some flexibility with that water usage, and that's the way we could use it, maybe to connect technology to the quota.
For the next question, maybe for you too, because I think you're a little bit of a lighthouse in that sector. What are the main barriers for large-scale technology adoption when it comes to efficient and precision water management in farm systems?
Costs and adoption. I think the first one is the most important. The farmers need to understand what their problem is and that they can solve that. But if they don't know that they have a problem, they won't invest. And for water, it's a different story, because if it's dry, you need to irrigate. But costs is a thing, but with water supply, it's the most yield. Water is the most yield increasing product that you could apply. So it's never too expensive. Yeah, it's never too expensive, but you need to see that.
I think it's also kind of point is risk aversion. I think farmers, not all of them, but a lot of them are very risk averse. So they're always kind of scared to decrease yields in a way. And that compared with a lack of knowledge on what's actually on the market of technology, because there's so much what you can use. I mean, we just saw that. They just don't know what's on the market, and then they're a bit risk averse. Just let the other ones try it first. I think that's kind of diffusion of innovation. When you take the airports, for example, first guy you saw with AirPods, you were like, well, you look kind of weird, and then suddenly everyone has them. And so you always start with the innovator, then you get the early adopter majority. That can be very short cycle, but in agriculture, that's a huge cycle. It takes us years, decades, till the first innovator and late majority. And I think we have to find a way how we can shorten that cycle, and that would be great for it.
I also think that irrigation, like your big farm, you have a lot of knowledge. You invested a lot of time into getting that knowledge. For most farmers, we have small scale sectoring. So we have small farms, small plots, and irrigation is too much of a task. So for the most regions, we need cooperatives, or we need like multiple farmers getting together to make irrigation systems, to get common irrigation systems, and also to get the knowledge, to get like one professional, or to get one farmer who's more into it, teaching the others, and also sharing know-how. So I think it's too much of a task for most simple farmers. Also from the investment point, like if every small farm is investing, it's not cost effective. You need to make a group. You need to invest together.
That would be my next question to you. What key factors are you considering when you're designing systems that are both water efficient and cost effective for farmers?
Well, for me, it's always both. So for a system to work, you always plan from behind, because most people start, I have a water source, how much can it take? And then they design big pumps and big pipes and everything. And then it's not efficient because you have too little outflow, your pump is not working right, your pipes have air and stuff like that. So you're wasting a lot of energy in water. So you have always to downscale from behind. You have to know, what is my plan? Also with smart irrigation, you use automation, you know what you want, and then you go backwards to your system. You downsize everything, you make it smart, and you get high quality products. Like most farmers say, I don't have the money to buy this pump, or I don't have the money for this and that. But for instance, for a pump, the investment cost is maybe 3% of the lifetime cost. 97% is energy, maintenance, and everything. And if you have a cheap pump, and it's always breaking down in the middle of summer, so don't invest into cheap piping, cheap material. Everything needs to be high class, and then it's running for 20, 30, 40 years, and that's where you save the costs.
Mm-hmm.
And also if it's reliable. Automation is a thing. I installed automation at farmers' places, and they said, it's fine, but I don't trust it. I will still go outside for frost protection, or I will still check if it's working. So you need high-quality products that are reliable, and then can take the work from the farmer. Can save on personnel, you can save on energy, on water, and that's where you get the cost production.
And from the innovation perspective, we already heard the first question from an investor. I'm pretty sure there's many more in the room. Thilo, is water saving innovation a business case? Is it a niche? What's your take?
I guess it depends on how you position yourself. Because from an investor point of view, they want to see a business model. Who's a customer? How do you convince him? And what's the return of investment for the customer? And when you then say, I save money, I save water, and water, there's just no money in water. Because my father just told me the electricity to get the water out of the ground is more expensive than the water itself. And then that's not a real business case. But on the other side, when you then position yourself and say, I save water, but I also save labor, I increase yields, then those are all numbers you can actually take, and then you have a business case, and then it's something very important and very interesting, I guess. And there's a lot of movement currently in that area, a lot of venture capitals, but also corporates investing in that field.
You've mentioned it briefly. How can better collaboration between farmers and water management experts and technology providers accelerate the implementation and the demand for water innovation and sustainable water management?
Yeah, like I said, if you can work together with a group of farmers, not only in the investment side, but also in the usage of which water is going in which crops, and how can we manage that rotation optimal for a region, and grow the wet crops in the wet areas, grow the dry crops in the dry area, the optimization of how to use our soil and the water that it needs, then you can really bring the whole thing to the next level. But then governments, of course, need to allow us to work together. So I think there is a lot possible. I saw also there are some initiatives from regions that have a pumping system from sugar factory that I know in Germany. That's also a solution. They use their wastewater for irrigation of an area of a few hundred hectares. So there is a lot of incense and there are a lot of options. But again, the government issues are always blocking innovation, or a lot of the innovation.
That's actually a pretty cool example, I guess, because I know that pretty well. It's at our home farm pretty close. And that's Nordzucker, the German sugar beet. So they make sugar out of sugar beets, use a lot of water. And they have a lake that's 14 hectare big. They made it up. And the whole water from the campaign, so starting in September until March, from Nordzucker goes into that lake. And now farmers start to get the water out of the lake again. And that's nearly 1 million cubic meters of water in there. So quite a bit for some hectares. And those are things that are pretty cool and cool example how they could work.
I think one point we're missing is we need to use synergies. Like farmers are not on their own. It's also like cities. They have basically everything we did in the last 400 years is getting the water out. So the agriculture did drainage, the cities made canals, the rivers were straightened, so everything went. Water is going quickly to the sea. Now the cities have to hold back with the storm water, otherwise we get flooding. Same for agriculture, same for the industry. The industry has wastewater. We need to use synergies. I mean, we need water storage in agriculture, but it's very expensive. But other, I would say, industries are also interested in getting water storage. For instance, cities for flood protection or rainwater storage. Same for big companies, like big industries, like Volkswagen, for instance. They have a lot of wastewater, which is treated. If they can get like 30 cents per cubic meter, they would be happy, and farmers would be happy to get water. So
we've heard about lots of different water innovations, starting from sensors to drones to autonomous irrigation. If I'm a farmer and I want to start more sustainable water usage, do I need the hardware first, or do I need to establish the data behind that?
Sensors.
Sensors.
And I say the knowledge.
The knowledge.
Sensors are the help. The knowledge is the most important. So know what the crop is using on which point, and then to figure that out, you need sensors, of course, or that, because the real guys can smell it, can taste it.
But you're totally right. As you said early on as well, sensor is not enough. I mean, then once you have the sensor, the point is to get from one single point to the whole field, and then it doesn't stop by the sensor. So it's like a huge investment often. I think what's kind of thing that farmers have to figure out, or the whole industry has to figure out, is in terms of financing, how you finance it. And I think we're pretty good topic now here as well. But that's something, that has to get better for farmers.
And if you could ask a wish to the public sector and to governments, what's the thing that public institutions and governments could do to support the adoption of innovation in the precision water management?
Make rules that are flexible, that we can share, that we can actually value the water that we get, that we are allowed to use it on the point. Of course, we need to retain the water, but if you apply technology and management to retain all the water you get, I hope that I'm also allowed to use that. That's something in the Netherlands and in Belgium that is scary. So yes, you have limitations, but maybe that's a better system than tomorrow a government's telling me, and now we stop irrigation, because that's what I could face.
And I think there's currently a lot going on, and a lot of funding and a lot of projects for innovations, for startups in the industry. And I think the focus should now be on how can we get the farmers to use that technology? How can they get the knowledge what's actually on the market, an overview of what's on the market, and how can it get easier for them to access the whole thing and not be scared of trying things out. And that's the shift we have to kind of get, because there's so many cool things coming up, new startups coming up, new ideas coming up, and we just need to get that more into practice. I think that's the biggest challenge, and I think that we're back to incentives So yeah, get incentives for farmers to actually try those things out.
Well, for us, it's a bit different as irrigation designer. Right now in the water sector in Germany, we have water supply and wastewater treatment, but we also need like a circular water usage, water management. And we don't have any law or legislation when you do the planning and the construction, everything. It's, what are you, water supplier or wastewater treatment? But we're water supplier. We need to think in a circular economy for the water system to reuse water in different steps. And we also need more educated people. We need irrigation engineers, or we need, it's very common in the Mediterranean, but we don't have a Mediterranean climate. It's very different. You cannot apply the knowledge from Israel to Germany. It just doesn't work.
Before we go into more of a vision question and finish the panel, I'd like to open up the discussion to the audience. Do you guys have any questions? Any things you might want to add? There, please, in the middle.
What are the alternatives to irrigation systems? Are there other ways to achieve that than an irrigation system? We heard about the huge increase in yield.
There's some things out there where you can use some biological stuff for the soil so that it has a better capacity of storing the water. But other than that, I'm not sure about anything, because water is, as you just said, is the most important factor for yield. So if you don't have the water,
You don't have the yield.
yeah,
So you can always, I mean, you can increase your soil health. It's what every farmer would do, but you can only gain maybe a few days. You cannot sustain for periods of drought as we had. Cannot do like, oh, we increase the humus in the soil and suddenly you can withstand a drought of 2 months. It's just not possible. You can gain maybe 3-4 days, more, not more.
and we see now in northern Germany, they haven't had rain for 2 weeks. There's no rain for the next 2 weeks, and what they're doing now is to stop the irrigation because they don't have the water anymore. And that those are times that gonna increase in the future, I guess.
So water infiltration and actually keeping that water for this. I think we need to think in a circular way and get the water that we get, storage that, don't leach it, and be able to use that in a drought period. You need to do that. If you then kill the irrigation at the point that it's too dry, that nobody wins, then we need to actually adjust our meals, I think.
And I mean, I've shown the numbers early on. The 35% of fresh water is just used for inefficient irrigation. It's just lost. It shouldn't be lost. And that's the point, as you just early on said. Farmers currently tend to they have very heterogeneous fields, but do a very homogeneous application of it in terms of fertilization of water. And I think your example from the battery is a very good one, because you don't need to put water onto your corn in a field where it doesn't need water. And I think we just need to get way more efficient, and then we don't have the problem of not having irrigation anymore.
I totally agree. I like what you said. And when you said we start too late and we apply too much, and that's my experience for every farm. It's always too late, and then you can never get back. And the crop is memorizing what you did to it by being too late. So you're not efficient. You need to be ahead of water stress, and you need to start irrigating in small bits, like not big volumes. It's enough if you give every 2 days a bit, and then it's fine. So there's a huge water saving potential, not just in smart application, but we also have huge losses in piping. For instance, leakage in piping. We have no idea how many million cubic meters we lose in municipalities and in agriculture. It's just unknown.
I think I saw a second question from the startup side.
So when you talk about inefficient irrigation, a big problem often is atmospheric drought. Have you ever thought about an option to tackle this, even if going to a big agricultural system?
What do you mean by atmospherical drought? So
when humidity is too low, the stomata of the plants close.
Yeah. So two ways. Some countries like I know Sudan and Saudi Arabia, they're doing it. They sprinkle water to decrease the temperature and increase the humidity. Then the difference between the humidity in the stomata and the air is less, so the transpiration is less, but it's a huge waste of water. So it's just not efficient. What you have to do is do not do luxury irrigation. For instance, if you're sugar beet, good farmers who irrigate sugar beet, the leaves in the afternoon, they will be flat, they will be dry. And if you're not familiar to it, you say, oh, it's not enough water. They should be standing up. But no, you have to be smart, because if it's too warm and sunny, and then the sugar beet is just not efficient. It's wasting a lot of water, and we have to minimize the luxury irrigation. So irrigate at night. We also did trials when is the best irrigation time and so on. For many crops, it's like 3, 4, 5 a.m. So just before the sunrise, and then it's really pushing, and then in the noon it's getting too hot, so it's wasting water. That's how you have to do it. No luxury irrigation. Also, in the beginning of the vegetation, you don't want to irrigate too early. You want the root system to develop. You want a natural resistance. So when it rains, the crop take all the water available, all the nutrients. If you irrigate all the time, drip irrigation, it's like in a greenhouse. You will have a root like this. It's nothing.
I think there was a second question or third question in the back there.
Yeah, thank you for the great discussion. If we think about expanding the available resource pool of water, what about working with high salinity water, brackish water? Is that in your circles being discussed? Is it still a topic or non-topic, be it in terms of changing the practices or working with desalination, etc.? Would be great to get your perspectives.
As far as I know, in Germany, it's not a topic, because farmers are too scared to ruin their soils. So we have many areas like Magdeburger Börde, where you have potassium mining and so on. So you have a lot of salinity in the groundwater, also in the waterways running there. There are no trials. I know from other countries, salinity is often like Central Asia. Salinity is not a huge topic if you keep it constant. So if you don't have too much fluctuations, the plant adapts. So if you can have almonds or pistachios and so on in high salinity soils. But it's, as far as I know, it's not a topic in Germany, and desalination is too expensive.
There's a fourth question, and maybe the last one from the audience.
Is there any technology available to help farmers profit from floods? 3 days of hard rain. Is there any systematic approach or technology available to profit from that recently?
Thinking about water retention?
Filtration zones.
Yeah.
Great.
Actually, that if you prepare your soil to infiltrate, if your soil is prepared to infiltrate in the wintertime, that's what I was showing in my sheets. That's a way of doing it. The other way is to make retentions. So big cities should have retention lakes that are not just wastewater sewage things, but also usable for regaining that water. And I know in the Netherlands, for anyway, there is a law saying to every major city that they have those retention lakes. They are not allowed to push all that water at once in the rivers. I don't know for Germany, but
it's similar. But one major issue, we had it in, for instance, northern Germany, 2023 to 24. It was a very wet autumn, a lot of sugar beet, a lot of potatoes. So the soil compaction from the harvest was immense. And then you could see it was raining a lot during the winter, and the water did not infiltrate. So we had a lot of flooding. And as I said, you need to see farmers as landscape managers, but they need incentives. It's not always possible when it's so muddy. You cannot go on the field and do deep plowing or anything like green crops, green coverage. But we need to think a broad picture. Maybe it's interesting for cities to pay farmers extra to do certain things, like cover crops, for instance.
Totally agree.
So, as a final outlook, if you would have the magic switch that you can flip right now and change one thing to improve water security for future generations, what would that be? Could be hypothetical, could be real, existing, practical.
Grabbing beer instead of water tonight. We'll start.
It's tough. I mean, we need to put water more into the focus. Like farmers have to have the focus, and everybody, all the stakeholders, need to think as a water as a circulation system. Like it's not just agriculture, as I said before. It's everybody, and we need more education. We need more training. Yeah.
I think it's, especially for the agriculture sector, incentives are the main challenge. So, as I said, I really like the Australian way of making farmers able to trade their water things, because that makes them more efficient anyway. And the second point would be to actually connect the quota or the water limits to efficient use of technology, or increase the quota for an efficient use of technology. Those two ways, I think, the two ways that would do.
Jacob, final sentence.
And for me, it's all about the knowledge. How can the farmers get to the right knowledge of irrigation, but actually to all the right knowledge? Everything is there, but all the knowledge in the world, again, the Incas and the Egyptians were way better farmers than we are now. So we really need to build up that knowledge database, but also make that transferable to the next generation through data, through AI or KE or whatever. But that's, I think, the main focus. We need to teach. That's why I started the campus.
And that's, if I may say, we don't need another app with just more data. We need solutions. So the farmer needs to see what he has to do. Like he wants to have a practical management approach. We need not data, maybe information, but especially solutions.
It's like advice. You need your grandfather telling you how to do it right. And I think that's the hard part of it. Technology is just a tool, not a solution.
But I think that's the perfect final sentence to this conversation. It is a networking conference, so stay connected if you haven't. Connect and keep the conversation going, share the knowledge. And to you guys, thank you for all the participation. Thanks for the questions, and have a fun networking session.